There we go, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 1 be taken from its place in the orders of the day, read for the third time by title only, and placed upon its passage.
Mr. Clerk, would you please report Senate Bill 1?
Senate Bill 1, an act relating to school councils.
Senator from Scott.
I yield to the senator from Boone for action on the bill.
Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor for me today to stand in this chamber and to present to you Senate Bill 1. I want to give a little bit of background about Senate Bill 1 before we get into the meat of the bill. It has to do with school governance. If you think about the services that state government and local governments provide, there's probably, well, I always say there is no other thing that we do more important than the funding of our school system and the governance of our school system. And about 8 years ago, it came to my attention through multiple sources, some of them very close to me, that when you looked at our school governance system, we had I would call it dysfunctional school governance system that was kind of in conflict with itself and was a source of a lot of confusion between all the stakeholders, but especially the parents. So I drafted a bill to put the authority of what we do in our school systems with the citizens of that community. And to do that, we have kind of an interesting convoluted system here in Kentucky where we've delegated substantial authority to something that is called a site-based council. And unless you're intimately involved with the school system, it amazes, most people don't even know what a site-based council is. But they have a lot of power here in Kentucky. And there's a lot of wonderful people, some of them sitting here in this chamber that either have served on site-based councils or intimately involved with them. But the problem with the site-based council is that it doesn't answer to the entire community. It only answers to a select number of people. And I think it's important for the members of this chamber and the public to realize that when this bill was created, and when Chairman Wise first let me have hearings on this bill some 7 years ago, there was not the controversy around curriculum and in our schools that we see today since COVID. We had hearings all over the state. Max Wise, I'm sorry for violating the rules. The chairman was very generous in airing this out. We had vigorous debate, and we had all stakeholders involved, some of them very, very much opposed. Now, this chamber has passed the contents of Senate Bill number 1 many times. I'm thinking 4 or 5 times we've passed this bill. In fact, Louisville passed a version of it 2 years ago that we did. We couldn't get it passed statewide, and when we get it passed in this chamber, but we couldn't get it passed in the other chamber. So I'm hopeful that with leadership's vision to make this Senate Bill 1, that we'll be able to make this law this session. Since this bill was first founded, or 7 years ago, we've had a lot of controversy around school curriculum, and it's made the urgency of this bill even more so. And I'm not here today to push one curriculum or push another curriculum or say this should be banned or that should be banned or we should promote this or we should promote that, because I don't think that's my role. I think that even when I disagree, those decisions made to be not by us, but our elected school boards. So that's what this bill does. It just is very simple bill, really. It puts the ultimate decision of curriculum and principal hiring in the hands of the person who works for the school board, the superintendent. Now, keep in mind, the school board hires the superintendent. They can fire the superintendent. They evaluate the superintendent. I think it's the perfect answer to this curriculum debate, because curriculum debates can be so emotional and people can descend on things, very emotional, but this ultimately puts these important decisions in the hands of the people. But there's kind of a cooling off period, because the superintendent who they hire then has to absorb this and make recommendations. But at the end of the day, if he or she doesn't reflect the wishes of that community, they get someone who does. So I think it's the perfect solution. Principal hiring, again, some states or parts of the states have already done this, is also, if you've ever been around the school, you know the most important thing to a school's success is the principal. And we have some great principals, but we also have some horror stories here in Kentucky where we didn't have good principals and there was nothing the community could do about it. So I urge all members of the chamber to vote for this important piece of legislation. And in closing, I'll just say this also. It's not only the most important thing we do, but it's also the most expensive thing we do. So we need to make sure the people, not just certain people, but all the people have a say in our school governance. Thank you.
Amendment that has been filed to Senate Bill 1.
Yes, Mr. President, can I have permission to speak to the amendment?
It's not before the body yet.
Okay.
Are you yielding for the purpose?
I will yield to the senator from Fayette.
Jefferson 33.
Jefferson 33. Excuse me, Mr. President. Excuse me, Senator from Jefferson 33.
Senator from Jefferson 33.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand that Saturday is an unusual time for us to meet, and I forgive the senator for referring to me as representing Fayette County. However, Fayette County is a great county, and I'd be proud to represent it as well. I have stated publicly that I'm ambivalent about Senate Bill 1. And the reason why I'm ambivalent about Senate Bill 1 is because I think that the senator makes really good arguments of adopting a system that's coordinated, that encourages collaboration, that makes sure that we don't have dips and valleys across a particular district because decisions are being made differently in different building sites, et cetera. But I think we also want to be clear that site-based councils, this is a significant change from the Kentucky Education Reform Act and how it was set up and the purposes of bringing community into the process. And I stand because I know of no perfection in that process, but I do know of significant input, involvement, and engagement of parents, teachers, and administrators across the board in terms of how these site-based decision-making councils have done their work. That doesn't mean they've been perfect. They have not. Doesn't mean all are working at a great level. I think that would be a reach to make that statement. But I think we ought to be cognizant of the fact that this is a real turning of the corner when we deal with this subject matter in this way and centralize that particular aspect of decision-making. Now, having said that, I recognize also the other side of that coin, particularly when we deal with issues of diversity, that there's been some inconsistency because of the very nature of how decisions are made in the political aspects of decision-making, even at various of these school sites. So I'm very concerned that, as he just indicated, the senator, that I have not witnessed this, but I take it as a given that there are some horror stories regarding some principals. I'm not familiar with that. But I understand there's no perfection. I'm concerned also about the decision-making of superintendents in the process. I'm even concerned about the decision-making of school boards, depending upon their history and their cultural background and the biases and perspectives they bring to the table, because we all bring them to the table. There's no question about that. So when we deal with questions regarding textbooks and who's going to be the chief administrator of a school, that sort of thing, I worry that given our history, that we drag that, or let me put it another way, that we ignore the fact that that history impacts our decision-making and how we manifest our value systems and distribute them in our decision-making every time we open our mouths, particularly when it deals with issues of race. Now, I know there's that touchy issue again, race. But the reality is, it's here, it's present, it's with us, there's a reality. So that's the concern I have. I'm still ambivalent, and I think that at the end of the day, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do before I make my vote on this particular matter. But I did want to express this. I don't think we can take these issues and not consider the dynamics that are involved and ignore that reality. So the senator's bill has some good points, and I have some concerns, as I've stated. Thank you. Mr. President, what I love about this body is that we do try to deal with fair play, and I see in doing that my good friend is telling me to hurry up. Thank you, good friend. Having said what I've said, Mr. President, if the clerk would report Senate Floor Amendment 2.
Mr. Clerk, would you please report Senate Floor Amendment number 2 to Senate Bill 1?
Senate Floor Amendment 2 to Senate Bill 1.
Senator from Jefferson, 33.
The Senate Floor Amendment 2 simply says that the superintendent shall ensure that the curriculum, textbooks, and instructional materials are culturally responsive based on the population of the school district. And it also says that the superintendent shall take into consideration the diverse makeup of the school district and school population when filling vacancies. This is very consistent with Senate Bill 1. And since they're making these kinds of decisions, and given our history, as I've spoken to earlier, I think this is a very reasonable floor amendment, and I move adoption.
Matter for the body is adoption of Senate Floor Amendment number 2. Is there a second? Matter before the body being a motion and second. Any question or discussion as to Senate Floor Amendment 2? Senator from Jessamine. You wish to respond to the floor amendment?
I do, Mr. President.
Please proceed.
To this wonderful body here, I would like to go back to a simpler matter. Let's look at some definitions. A culture is defined as the ways of life, including arts, beliefs, and institutions of a population that are passed down from generations to generations. But let's look at the definition you will find when you research. There are two. The arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively, Mr. President, or the customs, arts, social institution, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social groups. My concern for this amendment is that it further or continues to separate us into groups. This is the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We have many different social groups, many different racial groups. We can learn from one another without legislation. Let me continue. I'm concerned for the continued, what some would say, pandering to different social groups more than we do to cultural groups. We do want to move our groups closer together. We want to seek to learn from each other. And most importantly, we want to seek to understand and respect our differences. But this may not be the way. Is culture really what we live, or is culture what we want others to believe how we should live? Now, there's no doubt that there are some changes, some adjustments that are still needed in our society. Social changes and adjustments, judicial, education, no doubt whatsoever. But I argue that many of these adjustments need to and should begin at home. We should be teaching our children, our friends, and yes, even our enemies, Mr. President, these things. I don't think this is the right way to go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator from Boone, you wish to comment on the floor amendment? Prior to that, any other member who has not been previously recognized on this issue?
Yes, I do.
Senator from Boone.
I just want to say, as the bill sponsor, I consider this an unfriendly amendment.
Any other member seeking recognition for the purpose of question or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Floor Amendment number 2, vote aye. Those opposed, vote no. No. Noes have it. Senate Floor Amendment number 2 is defeated. Senator from Boone, do you have a motion on the bill?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. President. This time I wish to move for passage of Senate Bill 1.
Matter for the body is passage of Senate Bill 1. Are there any members seeking recognition for the purpose of question or discussion? Senator from Carter.
I have a question, if the sponsor would so yield.
Senator from Boone, will you yield to a question?
Gladly.
He will gladly yield, Senator from Carter.
And it's a legitimate question. On page 8 of 31, Perry and I, states the school council shall adopt a policy that shall be consistent with local board policy and shall be implemented by the principal. The way it is now, when that school board, when the school council, you know, it kind of it's tailor-made for that school, implemented by that principal. Do you envision the board policy to be just one big umbrella for all the respective schools to operate under, or do you anticipate the board to do one for each school like the council does now?
Senator from Boone.
Well, thank you, and thank you for that question. The idea behind this legislation is that the board would make that determination along with the superintendent. I know that one of the problems and one of the reasons why this legislation came forward, and I didn't really bring it up, but it is a big issue, is that in large school systems, in fact, I talked to our caucus chair before we came on the floor about this, in large school systems like Louisville, Boone County, Lexington, there's a problem with alignment where you have different since the curriculum is left up to right now to the site-based council. You'll have one school using one curriculum, another school using another curriculum. This has been a big problem in my district, so when a student goes from a middle school to a high school, they might have to switch, let's say, their reading curriculum to a different one. So this would leave that decision with the district. And quite frankly, it might be different for different districts. This wouldn't be a problem in a very small district where you just have maybe one elementary school and a middle school and a high school, but in a district like an urban district, it is a problem. So I would say whatever fits the school district, and that decision is not up to the bill sponsor, up to us, it's up to that locally elected school board.
Senator from Carter, do you have further question or discussion?
Just discussion. I understand the intent of the legislation. I have some potential issues with the application, especially in areas where, you know, if something's not broke in my district, I don't tend to try to fix it. I'm not hearing a great need for any reform, if you will, along on this measure. Our site-based councils work very well. You know, superintendents come and go. You can't get people to run for school board half the time. So, you know, in a rural district. And we've got some great elementary schools that are tailor-made for the demographic. And it's worked very well. I've got great hesitation about the application of this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other members seeking recognition for the purpose of question or discussion on the bill? Senator from Green.
President, I rise to speak in support of the legislation.
Please proceed.
I think the senator from Boone has communicated very clearly the significance of this legislation, the fact this is not the first time this body has seen it, and the timing, as he indicated, could not be better to deal with the curriculum question, along with the role of the superintendent in hiring and firing that principal. I think he's also made it clear the connectedness of this piece of legislation as it relates to the community as a whole, parents, taxpayers, community members. Through the process of voting to elect a school board member, are making their voice heard. Now, specific to the senator from Carter's question about not seeing the need, I don't think the senator from Boone mentioned this. This has been in almost it's been in, to my knowledge, every version that this body has passed, but I think this is quite significant and speaks directly to the need. And I direct members' attention to page 3 of the legislation. Page 3 in the legislation, the version we have in front of us, begins to speak to, through the existing language, the role that the school council plays. And it speaks to that relationship between the governing body of the school board and the local site-based decision-making council. And it's odd that we would have passed, years ago, language that seems very clear, but the courts interpret differently. I'm reading on page 3, line 20. Existing language says the school council shall have the responsibility to set school policy consistent with district board policy, which shall provide an environment to enhance the student's achievement and help the school meet the goals established by statute. Seems pretty clear. Local school council, site-based decision-making council, shall set policy consistent with district board policy. But apparently, over the years, the courts have interpreted this to not mean what it says. And so very correctly and rightly, the senator from Boone's legislation clarifies. School council shall set policy that shall be consistent with board policy and goals for the district established by the board. The school board establishes the goals for the district, as they should. The changes in this legislation that we've talked about and the one I'm mentioning now makes certain that those goals at the school level align with that board policy, and I encourage all members to support the legislation.
Any other members seeking recognition for the purpose of question or discussion? Senator from Jefferson, 19.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak on the bill.
Please proceed.
I have said oftentimes in this body that we don't operate with a scalpel. And one of the big problems I see with this legislation is that we are using a blunt instrument in every school in every district across the entire state of Kentucky. I thought we were usually debating for more local control. Instead, today we are taking the voices out of the hands of the people most familiar with the kids in those schools. There are, however, some good things in this bill too, and some good things that need to be addressed, and some good changes to be made because, as the senator from Boone pointed out, this bill has been in the works for a long time. While I will vote no today, my hope is this bill goes down to the House, that it can continue to get debate and consideration and fine-tune the approach to legislating so that it comes back here and can gain more broad support.
Any other members seeking recognition? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Alvarado. Senator Berg.
Senator from Jefferson, 26, please cast your vote, then explain.
Thank you, sir. I would like to vote no and explain my no vote.
Please proceed.
This has honestly, for me, been the hardest vote I've had since I've been elected. I have talked to as many people as I can. I've looked at this. I have really struggled over it because obviously education and quality education is extremely important to me and to every one of my constituents. I think there's some things in this bill that are good and that we need, and there are some things in this bill that haven't yet been explained well enough to reassure the people that it's going to impact, that they are still going to be able to make decisions for their own classrooms. I'm voting no. I think, along with my Senator 19, that I'm really hopeful this can come back to us in a better form. And we can vote yes, because there are some very good things in this. Thank you.
Senator Carpenter. Senator Carroll. Senator Caslin. Senator Douglas. Senator Embry. Senator Girdler. Senator Givens. Senator Harper Angel. Senator Higdon. Senator Hornback. Senator Howell. Senator Kerr. Senator McDaniel. Senator McGarvey. Senator Meredith. Senator Mills. Senator Neal. Senator Nemes. Senator Parrott. Senator Rocky Adams.
Senator from Jefferson, 36, please cast your vote and then explain.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to explain my aye vote.
Please proceed.
This legislation is very appealing to me. We did this 2 years ago in Jefferson County, and I remember sitting in a committee room, packed committee room, where everybody was convinced that this was the demise of the influence of the SBDMs. And in fact, that criticism never came true. In fact, this has worked excellent in Jefferson County, and I look forward to it working excellent in all of the districts across the Commonwealth. But I've also been made aware by many in my district and others that the curriculum piece does cause concern, and it perhaps brings in politics to the way that teachers teach content. So I also want to make sure that I pledge to those people who are concerned that I will be cognizant and watchful of that dynamic. But the truth is, in Jefferson County in particular, we have many different curriculums across our school system. We have 139 schools. Take the elementary schools, for example. We have some kids that move addresses, sometimes 2 and 3 and 4 times in Jefferson County, and they go to several different elementary schools. And when they are in those elementary schools, they have different curriculums. The reading curriculum at Farmer is different than the reading curriculum at Low Elementary. So I think that I'm hopeful that this legislation will start to streamline those curriculums for those students that have to move to different schools, particularly in Jefferson County. So thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Schickel. Senator Schroeder. Senator Smith.
Senator from Perry, please cast your vote and then explain.
Yeah, Mr. President, I rise to explain my no vote. And I will say I don't do that easily. Senator Boone understands this issue as much as anybody in this room. He's personally dedicated a large part of his life to serving inside the school system and has the children's best interests at heart, which can go unchallenged. But he said earlier that many districts are very different. And in Eastern Kentucky, fortunately right now, and it's not always been the case, I have a fantastic group of superintendents and school board members that are very active, some of the best probably I've ever had. But there's also a concern in my district where families and teachers feel like because of this legislation, they're going to be excluded or they're not going to be as involved as they were before. I've been assured by the Senator from Boone that's not the case, but nonetheless, as I read the language, it does look like there's going to be a shift in that, and that concerns me. You know, and I promise I'd be brief because I know we're short on time. But if you watch around this country and watch your TV, and I try not to because it's depressing a lot of times, but I've seen some cases where some school districts have gotten completely off the reservation, if you will, on some of the curriculum that they've got that really I find is shocking sometimes. And if you watch in these public meetings, it is the parents that come up to the microphone that say the things that I most agree with. They're the ones that are taking this battle straight into the public meeting, straight into the school board, and making their voices heard. And I think that's what makes the system work. And I don't want to ever cast a vote here that makes any of my teachers or any of my parents at home feel like that they're not wanted in there. Matter of fact, right now, we are probably at one of the greatest points where we need as much parent input and activity in our school with our children in my lifetime. And so we have had this model before 1990, and we've seen some of the stuff that's come out of Eastern Kentucky. So I encourage us to be cautious with it. This is going to pass, obviously, and there's a lot of really good work in this bill. And I do think when the House maybe tweaks it and makes some more changes to it, I could have gone along with us adding more members. If we were able to add some more members to it, I think that would have given me a level of comfort. But I appreciate the work and respect my superintendents and my school board members. They do a job that, honestly, I wouldn't do. They really carry a tough burden. But I also have to stand here for my teachers and parents who are bewildered at what's going on and really want to feel involved, and I want them to know that I need them there. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Southworth.
Senator from Anderson, please cast your vote and then explain.
Sway my aye vote, Mr. President.
Please proceed.
This is one of those situations where we need to get past the 50% mark on what the right vote is, because there's a few guiding principles that I take when I'm making these votes. One of my priorities is that we have got to get a better aligned chain of command and organization in our school systems, because there seems to be a lot of dysfunction, and I think that friction in the arrangement of things just makes people spend a lot of staff time and resources not on educating our children, but on internal combustion. So the other factor is we have got to get more parent voice and prioritization to parents who can have a voice on what needs to be happening at that local level. But I also would bring up that local school boards need to be at the top of that chain of command. In the Constitution, Section 183 says that the General Assembly has to provide for an efficient system of common schools throughout the state. That is the vision we're handed. That's the mandate we have here to make sure everything is as equal as possible all over the state. And having 3 billion different councils all not talking to each other, I find non-efficient and not common. And so my view on this bill, while it seems to me perhaps only maybe half of a bill, what we really need, I think more is needed. But I also feel like a lot of people are very focused on this issue, and our people being very focused on this issue makes us be very focused on this issue. And so I can cast an aye vote today, even with half a bill in place. I think the rest, we can either take a little bit of time and see how it goes, and then come back and work on it some more, or perhaps, as others have mentioned, the House has some more ideas. But I will cast an aye vote today and hope that we can make some kind of change, because change is definitely needed in some of these areas to help move the ball forward and stay constitutional.
Senator Stivers.
Aye.
Senator Storm.
Senator from Laurel, please cast your vote, then explain.
Mr. President, I'd vote no. And very briefly, I would like to echo the comments from the senator from Perry. Again, I think we have excellent superintendents and school boards in our area, and I myself have served as a parent voice on the site-based, actually the school-based decision-making council in my county. I've had a wonderful experience with that during my service there, and again, I want to be someone that's a voice for the parents. I want parental say on their students' education, and therefore I vote no.
Senator Thayer. Senator Thomas. Senator Turner. Senator Webb.
Senator from Carter, please cast your vote, then explain.
Explain my no vote, Mr. President.
Please proceed.
I won't be repetitive in some of the concerns that I raised during the debate. However, I do feel like there's 3 areas that politics have no place, and that is education, health care, and justice. And this appears to have some urban-rural undercurrents, and one size does not fit all. I value my superintendents. I have the best and brightest. I have wonderful, committed school board members and committed council members. And I'm proud of the education system in my district as it presently is. They have the flexibility and the input to manage extraordinarily. So I don't think there's some good portions of this bill. I don't think it's going to take politics out of the bill. I think it perhaps could put more in it. And I'm concerned about that. I look forward to see if the House will amend and send it back. But this time I vote no.
Senator West. Senator Westerfield. Senator Wheeler. Senator Wilson. Senator Wise. Senator Yates.
Senator from Jefferson 37, please cast your vote and then explain.
Explain my no vote, Mr. President.
Please proceed.
Mr. President, reading the bill, I think there's a lot of good work that's went into it. I do stand and vote no today simply because of the one-size-fits-all approach that I think that is being laid down in a very diverse set of school districts. Jefferson County, very, very different than other counties. Fayette County, different. And one thing we've learned by having different school districts is the best practices. You can learn from each other. And so this political body setting the one-size-fits-all, I think, may not be the full answer, although, as been put in there are some positive improvements in this legislation. So when it comes back to us, if those are put into it, I'll be a yes vote. But as of now, it's a no vote, Mr. President.
Any other members seeking recognition to cast, change, or explain their vote? Senator from Pike.
Just to briefly explain my vote, Mr. President, this was a tough vote for me because I see the value of the site-based councils, but I also value democracy and people's right to express themselves at the ballot box by voting for an elected school board member who then appoints a superintendent. Those people are beholden to the taxpayers of the county, which something that really, when I spoke to the bill sponsor, that I never really thought of, but it also makes a lot of sense to me, is that although our parents are definitely folks that need to have their voices heard in school, what about grandparents? What about other folks in the community that support financially our school system? Because these school systems don't only belong to the parents, they belong to all of us. We all have a responsibility for the nurturing and education of our children, and therefore I think we should all have an input on what is best for our children. And that creates a balanced, nuanced approach that best reflects the values and the trends and the diversity of our various districts. So I look forward. I think this bill doesn't necessarily replace site-based councils. What it does, it encourages a greater collaboration between the site-based council, the board, the superintendent. It creates that collaborative relationship between the community and the school that I think that we all want to achieve in legislation like this concerning one of our most important institutions, public education, something that's actually listed in our state constitution. So again, this was a tough vote because I think I can see there's been a lot of great points here to make, but I think that the approach adopted by the senator from Boone creates the most nuanced and the most appropriate way to handle these types of decisions regarding curriculum and leadership in our districts. So thank you, Mr. President.
Seeing no other members seeking recognition to cast, change, or explain their vote, there being 25 yea, 9 nay, Senate Bill 1 is passed. Senator from Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Bill 2 be taken from its place in the orders of the day, read for the third time by title only, and placed upon its passage.
Mr. Clerk, please report House Bill 2.
House Bill